Start recording. Hello, Montessorians, and thank you so much for joining us for another session of our live coaching calls. If you're new, just to remind you, this happens every Thursday at 10:30 a.m. Pacific, 1:30 p.m. Eastern. This is open to our entire member base. You get to log in and watch discussions that are all relevant to Montessori school owners. So joining me today, this is one of the guests I'm really excited about. This is Michael Cottam. Mr. Cottam, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate you.
Sure thing. Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir. So I'm going to do my best job at embarrassing the daylights out of you here for about 60 seconds. I met Michael by Googling, I think it was something like best SEO consultant in the world. And it's because we were having a difficult time at our agency. We used to offer SEO services, and I thought I was pretty good at it, but we ran into an unsolvable problem. And so I wanted to go find the smartest person in the world. And that's what I've found Michael to be. How long have you been working together? It's been at least 3 years, right?
Oh, at least that, yeah.
Yeah, maybe more. And you trained directly with Rand Fishkin, correct?
That's right.
And Rand, so, for anybody who's not a computer nerd, Rand kind of invented SEO, I think. He's like the grandfather of SEO, even though he's maybe 12 years old or something. When you look at him, he's very young. But if he's maybe the smartest SEO on the planet, I think Michael's the smartest SEO for hire. In terms of somebody that you can actually get to do the work for you. I don't know that there's anybody better, and I really mean that. I'm not trying to pander.
Well, thank you. That might be a bit of an exaggeration, but
I don't think it is. That's the thing is you've solved so many problems for us that nobody else could solve. So the proof is in the pudding, and you've been doing it for years. Yeah, so I'll leave you alone. I'm not trying to make you brusque.
Okay.
But here's
no problem.
What I do want to do, though, is I want our Montessori school owners to know that the information you're being exposed to here is of the highest caliber. There's so much misinformation in the realm of SEO. There's so many people with opinions and people trying to sell you things and people telling you to do things that might not only be, not effective, they could actually hurt you more than help you. So what we're going to do on this call, I'm hoping is maybe dispel with some of the myths and rumors, and then Michael will give us a good, solid, go forward plan for getting found online. And then now I'm done talking because I'm sort of detracting from the topic. So I'm going to transfer it over to you, Michael. Please take it away.
Okay. Hello, everybody. What we're going to be talking about today is search marketing and optimization for Montessori schools. I'm going to focus on the organic SEO side, which means showing up in the local 3-pack, showing up in the 10 blue links for a search. But I will talk briefly just to start off with, what does search marketing consist of, and go through a few terms so you kind of can see the big picture and see where we're focusing today. So first off, some terms. When people say search engine marketing, typically they mean both paid search and organic search, and the acronym there is SEM. PPC you've probably heard of, stands for pay-per-click, and that's mostly what paid search is, although you can pay per 1,000 impressions or just pay for banner placement. Most paid search though is PPC, and you probably heard Google AdWords, which they renamed in the last month or so to Google Ads. Still the same thing. That's what that's all about. We're going to focus today on SEO. SEO stands for search engine optimization, and some people will call that organic search. And there's a couple different pieces of it. You can rank in the local search with the 3-pack. We'll talk about that a little bit. You could rank in image search, you rank in news search, you rank in videos, and you could rank in the regular old, what they call the 10 blue links, how Google started off originally, where all you got was some titles and snippets, and you had to pick 1 of 10 on each page. The last acronym I want to talk about is social media marketing, and that's promotion on Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, et cetera. That can be organic, where you're just getting people to share stuff because your stuff is brilliant or popular or fun, or it could be paid, where you specifically target some people and say, I want everybody who lives in this city at this age range who likes these things to see my ad, and give Facebook a pile of money, and you can get some reach that way. So today we're going to be focusing on that third bullet there, SEO. So first of all, let's go through a little bit of how Google works and how search works, and talk about some misconceptions that are out there. So first of all, you'll hear probably a lot of people tell you that, oh yeah, you'll rank better if you actually give Google some money. If you buy ads, that'll boost your organic search. The reality there is that's a myth. Google says it's a myth, and I really do believe they're telling the truth. you would see Google get in way more antitrust kinds of issues if there was a way to buy yourself into what they're calling, the pure natural organic search. So that's a myth. However, if you're on the page twice, once with a paid ad at the top or on the side or wherever it happens to be, and you're there organically on the page, that does typically improve what they call your click-through rate, your CTR. And that's probably just a psychological impact of, hey, I see this brand 2 places, they must be a big deal. What you'll see happen is you get more clicks on your organic listing if you also had the ad. And Google's not doing anything there. You're just messing with people's brains because your brand is showing up twice as much on the page. So that's all that's going on there. So what about social media buzz? Does getting shared a bunch on Facebook and Twitter and things like that help you rank? Well, Google says no, they don't count those signals, and they don't count for page rank. However, it's really kind of a lie. It's pretty clear that Google is monitoring the buzz that's happening on a few of the platforms at least, probably Facebook and Twitter, maybe Pinterest, maybe LinkedIn, maybe Instagram. And the reason they'd be doing that is they're going to see some buzz and activity about something new, hot that you published way faster on those social media channels than if they wait for bloggers to discover your stuff and link to it, and then use Google's normal ranking signals, would have to do with links and their own value of your content and things like that. So if they want to find out what's new and hot, they're going to be watching for stuff to start showing up with a whole bunch of links to a new blog post you put out, or a new page, or whatever it is. If they see a whole bunch of that start showing up in different people's timelines and Twitter feeds, then that's going to be a clue to them that there's something going on there, and that does seem to impact rankings. So what about Google Plus? I talked about a lot of social media channels. I didn't talk about Google Plus. It's gone. Google tried really hard. They put tons of money behind it, and it just didn't really have any success. They had, I don't know, maybe tens of millions of users, which sounds like a lot, but a tiny percentage of Facebook numbers or Twitter numbers, and so they shuttered that back in April. So now, if you had a Facebook or a Google Plus page before, you had some posts on it. If you try to go to those posts now, you'll find that page is dead. Let's have a look at the search results landscape. So here we're looking at a desktop search. I did a search for Montessori schools in Portland. And what do we have on the page here? Up at the top here, we see one ad. You can see up to 4 ads here. And imagine how much that pushes all the organics down the page when you got 4 of these ads up there. But look at that ad in a little bit of detail. The ad is for Montessori.com, which I'm pretty sure is not a Portland business.
It's not its directory.
Yeah, you see, they're showing a Portland address in here because they know I searched for Montessori schools in Portland. So there's some interesting tuning going on in that Google ad to get that to show up with that address. That's at the top of the page. Montessori.com is paying for it. You want to make sure that if somebody did click on that ad, they're going to find you. So see what it takes to get in that directory if you're not there already. Next on the page, we have what they call the 3-pack. They call it the 3-pack because typically it'll have 3 listings. These listings are coming from Google My Business, which used to be called Google Places. Sometimes it's more than a 3-pack, and we'll see that in the next slide when we look at the mobile phone version of this. And the key takeaways here is you got the map at the top that shows you where things are. You've got the 3 listings, sometimes a 4th if there's an ad. And you've got ratings where you get an average rating, so 5.0, 4.0, etc., and the number of ratings there. And you got links to get to the website. You got links to click on for directions, all that sort of stuff. Those stars are addictive to searchers. So this 3-pack in general is going to draw a lot of clicks. There's a lot more information here that's helpful to the user than the 10 blue regular links below that or that ad at the top, because above and below this 3-pack, you don't have any ratings of anything. Ratings is those rating stars stand out, and that's an addictive, click magnet. Mm-hmm. The very bottom of that 3-pack, you see more places. If you click that, you'll go to what's essentially the Maps tab. If you look at the top of the page, you'll see the Maps link. If I click there, you get about the same thing as if you click more places. So obviously, it's pretty important to be in the top 3. This is a case where being number 1 is good. Being number 2 is almost as good as being number 1. Being number 4 is way worse than being number 3, because somebody's got to click the more places or the Maps tab to see you if you're number 4. The very bottom here is the first of the organic listings. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that and what the other 10 links are going to be with that in just a second. Let's look at this in mobile now. So in mobile, we get the ad and nothing else on the first page of results. In fact, the entire ad doesn't even show on page 1 here. Page 2 on your screen, now we're seeing the ad for Bethany Village Montessori up there. So this is a paid ad, just like that ad that was at the top of the page, except you're buying the ad in Google My Business instead of buying it in Google Ads. And this is kind of a new thing. I think that's probably been there for maybe a year or something like that. Before that, the 3-pack was only free results. So register Google My Business for free, you do the right stuff, you show up here, you get your clicks. Now you can buy your way into the top spot. So if you find yourself at number 5 or number 6 in the results for your top term, and no matter what you do, or you're working on doing the right things to get yourself in the top 3, you're not there yet. In the meantime, you can get yourself in the number 0 position above the number 1 result by paying for it with an ad. Now, this is what's on page 3 of the mobile display. Notice the top, we've got Yelp, which is a directory, and then below that, we've got individual businesses, which are in that city that I search for. I search for Portland. You're going to see a mix. Sometimes you'll see more than one directory up there. If I was doing a search for law terms, you'd see a bunch of directories like Avo, Justia, and FindLaw occupying a lot of page 1, and then you see law firms that are in that same city. What Google's doing in this section of the organics is they're saying, okay, if you didn't like the stuff in the 3-pack, let's show you some results that are about Montessori schools in Portland. That one Yelp page, Yelp isn't in Portland. Well, maybe they are, but Yelp has that page that's tuned for Montessori schools in Portland. And so Google understands this is a page that's all about Montessori schools in Portland, so it's a good result. And then Google's also looking at businesses it knows are located in Portland. So we could have results here that don't have the word Portland in the title at all. But if there was markup on the page that told Google that, ABC Montessori School is located at, 123 Killingworth Street in Portland, then Google would put that together and say, okay, I know this is a Portland business and it's a Montessori school, and show it on page 1.
Michael, just out of curiosity, do you have any strong feelings one way or the other about Yelp as a directory?
Lots of strong feelings, and I don't think we have time in this call to go through them all. Yelp can be very aggressive in some ways. They're very aggressive at filtering out fake reviews or reviews that have been coerced. In other words, you have a client that comes to you and uses your services, and you say, hey, can you write me a review on Yelp? If that client has never reviewed anything on Yelp before, and they go out and they write a review, if it's their first review, Yelp's not going to show it because they're pretty sure you coerced that review and they don't want that. Same thing if Yelp notices that you get on average 1 or 2 reviews a month, and all of a sudden on the 17th of the month you get 35 reviews. They're going to throw that out because they know you didn't email it. So Yelp can be pretty vicious with reviews. We're going to talk a little bit, a couple screens ahead here, about how Yelp can impact rankings a little bit, but it's not major. Google and Yelp have it's not a love-hate relationship, barely like hate relationship. So Google doesn't use much from Yelp, but they do use a little bit, and we're going to talk about that in just a second.
Great.
So let's talk about what makes that 3-pack show up, because you don't get that 3-pack at the top of the page all the time. You'll get it when Google figures out that most people who search for this term are wanting a result in their own city. So, for instance, if you search for Italian restaurant, even though you don't tell Google what city you're in, Google knows what city you're in from your phone's IP address or your home computer's IP address or the Wi-Fi IP address, whatever it is. They know what city you're in. And what Google knows is, historically, when people have searched for Italian restaurant, they almost always click on businesses or pages that are about their own city. So the Yelp page about Italian restaurants, Portland, or whatever the restaurant name is that actually exists in the city, that sort of stuff. It's all about click history. So if out of the last 1,000 times Google saw people search for Montessori schools near me, even if they didn't use the words near me, it's very unlikely somebody in California is going to click on a result that's a national result, like the homepage for Montessori.com or .org. Google's going to see lots of clicks for the city page that matches the searcher's city, or businesses that really do exist in that area. And so based on that, they're going to show more local results. And that happens in the 3-pack. That causes a 3-pack to appear. But also in those 10 blue links below the 3-pack, if Google is seeing a historical pattern of people like businesses near them for this search term, then that mix of 10 results down there is going to be heavily biased towards local businesses versus, let's say I search for a medical term about acid reflux or something like that. Google's not going to see very many clicks at any business that's local. Maybe there's some clicks on some doctor sites, but it's going to be a tiny percentage. In that sort of case, you're not going to get the 3-pack. You're going to get this, the national results. So that's what's going on. This is all about click history. This is an example of local organic results. So we're seeing 10 blue links here. And we actually, in this particular search, we did see the 3-pack above. When this happens, you're going to see this mix of things like Yelp, directories like Yelp, and these other organizations, which are actually located in the searcher city. Sometimes Google can get fooled as to whether the business is located in the city or not, just because the city name is in the title. They're not terribly good at detecting whether a website really is located in the user city. They're mostly matching the city name they think you're in. I had an example where I was living just south of Bend, Oregon here in a town called Sun River. And for whatever reason, when Google looked at my IP address, they thought that area was called Three Rivers. And so if I search for Italian restaurants and I don't specify anything else, Google looked up my IP address. So in the 3-pack, they'd show 3 Italian restaurants that were near me. But in this 10 blue links for the local organic results, they would show Italian restaurants in Three Rivers, Michigan and Three Rivers, California, because they couldn't find a city in Oregon called Three Rivers because nobody called it Three Rivers. It's called Sun River. And so there's some funny stuff going on there where they're taking your IP address, trying to come up with a name of where that searcher is, and then trying to match that to either pages like the Portland page at a directory like Yelp, or page titles, that in a page where the business is for home pages. So what we see here is some directories with pages about topics in that city, and we see some businesses that are actually in that city. So what gets you in that 3-pack? Because obviously that 3-pack's at the top and those stars in the map are candy for the searcher and draw most of the clicks. You really want to be there. The things that get you 3-pack, first of all, you can't get the 3-pack without a verified Google My Business listing. What verified means is it means that Google is really sure you're at that address. The way they figure that out is you can create a listing at business.google.com/manage. And you can give them your address, your phone number, things like that. They're then either going to send a postcard, or if they have some other information from directories that cause them to believe you're really there, you might get auto-verified. Some people can get auto-verified, most can't. They're going to send a postcard to that address to make sure that you really show up. You can't verify a PO box. You can't verify a mailboxes, etc., a UPS store, any of those sorts of things. Google is on to that. Every once in a while, somebody gets away with it. But if a human ever reviews that, they're going to delete your listing. So if you get your mail for your school at a PO box or a mailbox, etc., do not use that in your Google My Business listing. You need to use the physical street address. By the way, Google My Business used to be called Google Places, and then Google Places for Business. Google seems to have a habit of renaming every one of their products every 3 to 5 years just to confuse everybody. And it's fairly successful. So the recipe for getting in that 3-pack, there's 3, maybe 4 areas that Google's going to look at. First one is called the NAP. NAP stands for name, address, phone. It really should be like NAPW for name, address, phone, website, but it doesn't sound as good as NAP, so people just call it NAP. It's very important that it's consistent. And by consistent, it means what Google My Business has as the listing data you entered there has to match what Google sees other places like Facebook, City Search, Yelp, Foursquare, things like that. I'm going to talk about that in a little. Links to your website matter. Links to your website, just like for regular organic search, are treated by Google like votes for your website. So if there's 3 coffee shops in the block, Google wants to list first the coffee shop that's the most popular. So if everybody writes reviews about Starbucks or whatever it is, that's wants to show first, and one that nobody seems to write anything about. The number of reviews and sentiment of reviews matters, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. And the fourth item here, and I say maybe, is user engagement metrics. With regular organic search, so not the 3-pack, but the 10 blue links area, as of about 2 years ago, Google added a major ranking factor, and they're not really admitting they're doing it, but there's been tons of studies to prove it. Basically, if you show up on page 1 for something, and let's say you're in position number 4 on page 1, and maybe the average click-through rate if for position 4 across all queries on the planet is 11%. If Google sees your click-through rate as 2%, that tells them that whatever users are seeing for your site in position 4 there doesn't line up with whatever they were looking for when they typed in that search term. That's a negative. If, on the other hand, you had a click-through rate of 15% or 20%, that'd be a super positive sign that people who typed whatever that term was really like what they read, and it's enticing enough that they clicked on it. The other piece of user engagement metrics is bounce rate. So let's say somebody was selling some service and they showed up on page 1 in position 4, and they got an average or better than average click-through rate, and users land on that page, and the page says, call now to get your quote. People hate that. They're going to click the back button. Or let's say that page loads super slow on mobile, then a huge percent of people are going to sit, wait for the page to load, give up, and click the back button. That bouncing back to the search results and clicking a different result is an indication of Google that people generally didn't like your site. Now, if they click into your site and on average they spend 3.5 minutes on your site before they click back to look at one of your competitors, that's a pretty strong signal. And it shows that you at least had enough interesting and relevant stuff to engage them for several minutes, which is more than an average site would get for a time on page. So that's a positive sign. The best sign is you ask Google a question, they click on your site, and that searcher never comes back to the search results because you perfectly answered their question. So that's what user engagement metrics are. Certainly that's working in the organics, that 10 blue links. We're not sure today if it's working in that 3-pack. If it's not, you gotta believe that Google is working on getting those engagement metrics in there. So we ought to behave in what we're doing as if user engagement metrics do matter. Let's talk about that NAP consistency. What Google wants to see is they want to see confirmation that whatever you typed in their listings is correct. So they're worried about you maybe making a typo when you enter the phone number or the website or the address, or maybe you added your Google My Business listing 3 years ago, and 6 months ago you moved to a new location and you forgot to update Google My Business. You updated your Facebook page, you updated your website, you updated Yelp, but you forgot to update Google My Business. They're very leery of that because they look like an idiot. If Yelp has your new address and Google Maps sends you, type in Montessori school and somebody, clicks on the directions thing on their phone and they drive there and they get there and it's now dry cleaners. That makes people go, wow, I'm not using this anymore. I'm going to use Apple Maps, or I'm going to use whatever, right? So if they think that they have the wrong info because what they have listed doesn't match what they're seeing other places on the web, then you're not going to show up in the 3-pack because they think they probably have the wrong data. And they'd rather show somebody where they're 100% sure they've got the right address and the right phone number. So how do you audit your NAP and figure out whether you have any problems here? Best tool to do this really is Moz Local. So if you go to moz.com/local and you click on check listing, you put in your business name and your zip, and it's going to pull back whatever it thinks are listings out there for you and give you a little chart like this that shows you how you're listed. This one is pretty good. It's showing here that this first bar is for Google My Business data. That 100% matches what they're able to find on Facebook. It's only partly matching what's in this first bar. That big red is bad. That's an inconsistency. The fourth bar is good at 97, totally missing on info group here, et cetera, et cetera. If you actually drill down in the Moz tool, you'll see data like this. So here I'd search for a little burger joint in Sun River, and it's highlighting for us in red things that are inconsistent. Notice that so this being in gray, Big Belly Burgers and Brew shows that it matched whatever I looked up on Moz Local, and the address matched. It's all black. The phone number matched, but the website was different from the one it found in the Facebook and Google listing. In the second one here, they typed in a slightly different business name. Now, as a human, we look at that and go, yeah, that's probably the same place, right? But what Google doesn't really care Google just wants it to match, because if at that address it now said, XYZ dry cleaners, then they want to consider that a very negative signal that you're still there. Notice they've listed one phone number in the number 2 listing here, and it's different from every place else. That tells Google, hey, maybe they've changed the number, maybe we don't have the current one, things like that. So that's NAP consistency. Next piece that matters for ranking is links to the website. Now, for that 3-pack, it's a little bit different from the regular organic listing. It appears that what's key is links to the domain overall. So links to your website, no matter what page. If you got a lot of them, that's good stuff. That's different from the regular organic ranking. So for regular organic rankings, the ranking of a specific page in those 10 blue links has to do with links to that particular page. Now, links to the domain do matter in that instance as well, because if you link to your homepage, that homepage sends link juice that it gets in from its links to the other pages that, let's say, the main menu link to. So your interior pages will still get some link juice from links to your homepage, but not as much. That doesn't seem to be a factor in ranking for the 3-pack. Just go out there and get links to whatever pages you can on your site. It's all going to count. So the last point here I want to talk about is that one really strong link can make all the difference. Going out and getting 20, 30 links from dumb little directories that you've never heard of, that all look kind of sketchy, those are not going to move the needle. If you get one link from your city newspaper, or one link from a business journal site, or a link from a big local charity for sponsoring a charity or partnering, something like that, that can make all the difference. I have a client in Portland who's a criminal defense attorney. Portland's a big city. Portland Metro is something like 1 to 2 million. So there's hundreds and hundreds of law firms that are criminal defense attorneys. And my client, one-man band, left a big firm, hung up a shingle, built a new little website, and he got mentioned in the Portland Oregonian newspaper with a link to his site because he helped co-sponsor a mugshots bill. That one link put him in the 3-pack ahead of hundreds of other law firms.
Wow.
Because it was such a strong site. So go after the biggies when you're doing link building. So how do you know how your links are? Well, the first thing to realize is the strength of your site only matters relative to the strength of the sites you're trying to rank against. So you don't need to rank against Yelp. You're never going to outrank Yelp in terms of backlinks because they have millions. But if you remember that 10 blue links page where we saw a bunch of different Montessori schools in there, you're going to move up above those other Montessori schools if you can have a better backlink profile than those sites. So you need to be able to look and see, how do I stack up against my competition? Easiest way to do that is to use this thing called the Moz toolbar, and the link is there on the page. It's a Chrome plugin, and what it does is when you do a search, it puts these little black bars underneath every one of the search results with these statistics on the links that Moz sees. Now, Moz and Google don't see the same links, but it's pretty close. Moz updated how they crawl the web, how deep they crawl, how big their database is, to where nowadays sometimes you'll see links that Moz finds that Google Search Console didn't see. So it's pretty close. Moz has also done a good job at trying to understand and recognize the kinds of links that Google's not going to care about. So instead of just doing the math and adding up all the links saying, okay, you're a domain authority 24, if Moz can spot that all those links came from a little network of 100 sites that are all in the same server and that nothing else links to, that's pretty fishy, right? Moz understands that. So private blog networks would be an example of that, where people build a whole bunch of what looks like news sites, but no human ever reads them, and they just sell links on them, and they all link to each other. Moz can see that, and what you'll see if a site's getting most of its links from private blog networks is you'll see a page like this where it'll be a PA of 34 and a DA of 2. Both of those numbers are out of 100. And so what Moz is doing at the PA and DA is trying to approximate PA being page authority, DA being domain authority. PA is kind of trying to be like page rank, and domain authority is kind of like an intermediate metric, which helps you decide how strong the site is overall. Those link stats there, next to PA, that's 71 links to that page, and it's links from 17 root domains. So a root domain is like xyz.com. So www.xyz.com is the same as xyz.com. It's the same as, michael.xyz.com. So that's what a root domain is. It's the something dot something end of the domain. Second set of stats there, domain authority, that's saying there's 905 links that Moz sees to pages all over that website, not just that one page, and it's coming from 18 root domains, 18 different websites. That root domains number is probably the most important one to look at. Now, if those 18 root domains are all in a private blog network, that's worthless. But more typically, it's going to be one from a newspaper, one from City Search, one from somebody's blog, one from some review site, one from greatschools.net, things like that. That would be a typical kind of distribution. And so all else being equal, if you've got more root domains linking than your competitor, you'll do better. If you have more links total than your competitor, you'll do better. So how do you go about getting backlinks? Let's talk about good ways to get backlinks. Okay. Newspapers are killer. Industry publications are generally killer too. The way to evaluate any of these sites, whether it's a newspaper or a charity site or whatever it is, use that Moz toolbar, bring up that page, and you'll see the toolbar at the bottom show you how many links they have and what their domain authority is. If you see something with a domain authority of 80 or 90, that would be what you expect a big city newspaper to have. A little city newspaper might have a 45 or a 60 kind of domain authority. Your personal blog on Blogspot that only a couple of your family members follow might have a domain authority of 5 or 10. So that's how to look at those and evaluate how strong they are. Other businesses you do work with, maybe other schools you partner with, or colleges that are nearby where you've had a bunch of students graduate and go to, or things like that. If you've got some partnership programs going on, that's a great way to get links. They're super strong. Conferences and event websites, those are really good. Other schools, that sort of thing works. Sponsorships and scholarships actually work really well. So in case of a sponsorship, let's say you sponsor a tree planting event in the neighborhood, get mentioned on that tree planting charity's website and that link for something. In terms of scholarships, what you can do is you can have a page where somebody can apply for a scholarship to another institution. Maybe it's a community college or a local university, and maybe you're offering a $500 scholarship to people who write about something like how my Montessori schooling prepared me better for college. And then you go to that college or the university, whatever it happens to be, and you propose to them, hey, we'll sponsor a scholarship to just your school, and here's the page where somebody can apply and write up their little essay about why whatever. Get that college to link to that scholarship page on your site. That's a killer way to build a really strong link. Typically, college and university websites are going to have very, very strong domain authority because lots of people link to them. Link to their application pages, they link to their classes, they link to their events, and so they're basically link magnets. They're awesome. Last bullet item here, I've got paid link builders. It's in red because this can be really good or can be really bad. Google doesn't really have a problem with you using paid link builders, paying people to do marketing for you and get you listed and featured, paying a PR person to go and talk to reporters to get you quoted in some story or get a story written about some new program at your school. That's all good. Articles for industry news publications, lifestyle publications, regional publications, paying people to go and write articles where it makes sense to mention you as an example of something, or about a conference or an event or whatever it is. It could be about an open house day or something like that. That's all good kind of paid link building. Now let's talk about bad ways to get backlinks. So I mentioned private blog networks before. These are fake news sites that are really created just as an excuse to sell links onto them, and nobody ever goes to them. The people creating private blog networks keep trying harder and harder and harder to fool Google into thinking that they're real news sites. Some of them get away with it for a while. Eventually, it's going to get you in trouble. You don't want to be doing blog comments all over the place. If you do happen to have some blog comments that people have written or you've written with links back to pages in your site, that's okay if it's kind of random, but don't think of it as a link building strategy. If you do anything that automates it, there's tools out there where you can type in what you want to put in a blog and it'll go find 10 million blogs and try to post that comment to it. That's very bad. Google's not going to like that, and that can get you a penalty. Same sort of thing with comments and forums. It's really no different from the blogs. It's a very old school black hat link building technique, and Google is all over it. Directories you've never heard of. There are thousands, maybe millions of directories out there that are totally worthless, meaningless, no human ever goes to. City Search, I've been to City Search. I don't go often, but it's a real brand. Foursquare, sure. Yelp, Better Business Bureau, those are all legit kinds of things. If you haven't heard of the directory, especially if you see somewhere in the top menu, submit URL or submit your link, that's trouble. You don't want to be in those. Those aren't going to pass any link juice to you anyway, and too many of that, and Google knows you've been trying to work the game here. E-press releases worked for a while. That probably stopped about 5 years ago. It used to be my favorite cheap way to build links, and then it was not. So first of all, e-press releases in general, the links will all be no followed. And the kinds of sites that would take your press release and push it onto 100 other sites, none of those 100 other sites, which will take your press release without even reading it, are worthwhile because real people don't go there to read those. So stay away from e-press releases. If you want to do a press release, do it because you're trying to get a real human reporter to write something about you. And if you're going to do that, I wouldn't do an e-press release. I would write a regular press release and have your PR person call up the reporter, send them an email and say, hey, I have not published this yet. Do you want to be the first? This is a great story because, et cetera, et cetera. E-press release has no value. Sorry, PR Newswire, you're dead. Article marketing. This used to be a popular link building technique. It's a lot like an e-press release where you write an article and then there's a bunch of sites that will republish it on a whole bunch of worthless sites. The kinds of websites that you'll see doing this are called Articles Factory, eZine Articles, Article Snatch, Articles 123, ABC Articles. It was a big business for a while. It's dead. It'll actually get you a penalty. It'll get you a manual penalty in Google. You have to go and either remove the links or disavow them. So if somebody says article marketing to you, run away screaming. Same thing about article syndication. Now, this can happen in a natural way sometimes. So some of the big news aggregates where like Fox or NBC, or some of the radio stations where there's a single company that owns dozens and dozens of them, if they run a story, a legit story on one of their outlets, a lot of times it'll get picked up by the other ones. I think you're fine there. Google is probably ignoring all but the first one because Google can see that those other copies of the article is a duplicate, but that first one is worthwhile. So if you see a story done about your school, get syndicated, published lots of places, don't sweat it unless you go looking at those places that's been published and they all look kind of sketchy. If they look like, well, here's the Cincinnati radio station, here's the Jamestown radio station, here's the Portland radio station, that's all fine. Avoid widgets. Widget link building worked really well for a while, where you'd give somebody a badge that says, a certified XYZ, sponsor or business or whatever it was, and then that widget would have a link in it back to you. Don't do that anymore. That'll get you in trouble as well. And paid link builders. So anybody that tells you that you give them X amount of money and they guarantee you get on a certain number of sites, run away from those people. The kinds of link building that works is where they can't guarantee they can get you on the site because they're having to write a legit article and pitch a real editor who doesn't want to put garbage on their site, will read the article and go, no, that's too self-promotional, or whatever it is. If it's easy, it's not going to work. If you have to work really hard and actually create a really good story to get your story with a link in it published someplace, okay, that's good. Let's talk about reviews. So reviews in Google affect rankings. At one point, these were called Google Plus reviews, but then of course, Google Plus, bit the big one. They're really Google My Business reviews, and they're the reviews you get if somebody searches for your business name or searches for your category and you show up in the 3-pack or you show up over on the right side of the screen in the knowledge panel. There'll be a link over there that says write a review. That's the review that impacts rankings. So if you type in your school name, so if it's XYZ Montessori School of Portland, and you get the big box over on the right-hand side called the knowledge panel, that's everything about your school with photos and a map and existing reviews, that's what you want people to do if you want them to write a review about you. Go there, click the write a review button, and they need to be logged into a Google account, of course, and then off we go. The number of reviews you have in Google matters. Once again, just like the links, you only have to be better than your competition. If you're a criminal defense attorney in New York City, you need 100+ reviews at least to get in the 3-pack. If you're a Montessori school in a town of 100,000 people where there's 2 other schools, you don't need any because there's only 3 spots in the 3-pack. Someplace in between, you might need, 5 reviews might be enough to do it. If your competition all have 5 to 10 reviews, then you ought to be aiming for at least what they have. If you can double them, that's great. But if the competition has 5 reviews, 10 reviews, and 15 reviews, and you've got 15, you don't need to push for 50 or 100. You just want to be up in the league of what they have. If you can be a little bit more, that's cool. But you don't have to go nuts on it. The sentiment, in other words, what the average rating is, matters a bit. So I've seen plenty of instances where Google will pick a bunch of businesses for the 3-pack because they got 4.6, 4.8 stars, and they won't pick the one that has 3.1 stars, even though it has lots of links to it. So it does seem to matter. But every once in a while, I'll see an instance where even in moderately competitive space, you'll see a listing in there that has no reviews. That's probably making it in there because there's some social media buzz about that business. And so Google's going, well, I'm not seeing the signals over here, but boy, everybody's chattering about it on Twitter. Google's going to throw that in there. They're probably going to do the user engagement metrics thing, measure that for a month. And if you're getting good clicks, people aren't bouncing back, well, we'll keep them there. Let's talk about Yelp reviews. We talked about the like-hate relationship between Google and Yelp. Google does not appear to use the Yelp reviews to impact rankings. So if you have 100 reviews in Yelp and 5 reviews in Google, those 100 reviews in Yelp are probably not going to have any impact. The one place it does have an impact is if we're looking at a search term that's not an exact match to a Google business category. And having that term in the text of a review on Yelp is proven by a guy named Mike Blumenthal, who's a big local search expert, to be able to get you into the 3-pack. So the common terms like Montessori school or schools in city name, things like that, Google knows how to match those up with listings at Google My Business. Here's an example. For attorneys, Google has a category called something like family law attorney. They don't have a category for child custody lawyer. So if someone searches for child custody lawyer, Google can tell from the click pattern, because that gets searched a fair bit, that boy, people are looking for a local search no matter where they are in the country. They're looking for local business when somebody types child custody lawyer. But child custody lawyer doesn't match any of the Google categories. Those words don't match family law, and Google doesn't know what those words mean. All they're looking for is matches. They see lawyer in child custody lawyer, and they see law in family law attorney, or whatever their category name is, but they don't know that that's a better match than a DUI lawyer, for instance. So what Google will do is Google look in the text of the Google reviews and the Yelp reviews and see if they see child custody lawyer in the text, and then they'll make it rank. So let's say you have a particular program that's a subset or an important aspect of Montessori teachings, and somebody is searching for a Montessori school that teaches X. Google's not going to have a category for that. And so there you'll want to be listed in Google My Business as a Montessori school, and you'll want your review text from at least one of your reviewers to contain that term X. Right. Let's talk about do's and don'ts for reviews. So it's perfectly fine to ask clients for reviews. You don't want Google or Yelp to know that. They'll both tell you that you may not solicit reviews because they think that then you're encouraging reviews which aren't totally authentic, or that you're only asking people liked your service. Well, if you're not doing something in a way they can detect, then it's not going to hurt you. So a perfectly reasonable thing is to ask people on, customers, parents who have kids in your school on a fairly regular basis. It's like, hey, if you liked what this teacher did this year, could you write a review? What you don't want to do is do something that allows Google or Yelp to know that you ask people. So don't go and email the entire parent body on the last day of school and ask them all to write a review, because what Google and Yelp will see is throughout the year, 1 or 2 reviews a month trickle in, and then on June 17th, 172 reviews showed up on Google. Google's going to go, I know what you did there, and I'm deleting those. Yelp is way more aggressive with this. If Yelp sees a review from somebody who's never reviewed a business before in Yelp, that's going to be hidden until that person establishes a pattern which makes them look like a natural reviewer. So maybe once they have 15 different reviews scattered over 6 months, some are restaurants, some are dry cleaners, some are travel agencies, some are schools. Okay, now all of a sudden they're going to start showing those reviews. But Yelp will hide those if they think it was coerced or solicited. So getting reviews in the Yelp is a positive thing. Don't go after anybody who's not already a fairly busy Yelp reviewer. When you're asking for reviews, what you ought to do is ask people, first of all, have you ever reviewed somebody on Google or on Yelp? And if they say, yes, I've reviewed people on Google, say, hey, that's cool. Could you possibly go here when sometime you get a moment and write about your experience with us? And you give them a link just to the Google page, not to the Yelp page, because they didn't tell you that they're ever reviewed on Yelp. If they say, nope, I've never reviewed anybody on Google or Yelp, thank you very much. Have a nice day. You don't want anything from them. All it can do is damage you. If Yelp starts to see a pattern that indicate that you're repeatedly soliciting reviews, you can get yourself in Yelp jail. Google, you can get away with a lot more crap, but that's probably pretty temporary. Google's going to be working on that because they're getting some bad press about how it's easy to get away with fake reviews on Google and it's not easy on Yelp. And they don't like Yelp looking better than them. So they're going to work on this eventually. It's okay to reward clients for reviews. So let's say you do something like, we'll give you a $20 Starbucks gift card if you'll write us a nice review. That's fine as long as nobody knows you did it. So do it verbally. Don't send an email. And then you're good. A nice way to use a little bit of reward leverage that works actually better than giving the client something for themselves, because then they feel a little bit kind of, oh, maybe I'm being selfish by doing this, or I shouldn't be taking this, or you're buying my review. Do something like this. Tell somebody, if you'll write a review for us on Google or Yelp or whatever it is, we'll donate $10 to this food bank. So you're doing two things. First of all, is you're not bribing them because they don't get anything. And number two, you're saying, if you don't write a review, you're taking $10 away from this food bank. You're a bad person. So that's a little bit of kind of judo going on there. I love that technique. Everybody wins then.
That's brilliant.
Just don't try to get a press release about how you donated $500 to this food bank, all from money you contributed, paying people to write reviews for you. That's not gonna fly. It's okay to ask people who are not customers for reviews. So you can ask teachers at your own school to review the school. You can ask other schools to review your school, and you just tell them, I'll review yours as well. Maybe the principal of your school knows the principal of one across town. You know each other a bunch of years. You work together someplace. Perfectly fine to write a review about. It doesn't have to be a general review about the school. You can write a review about one teacher at that school, and write that review at the school's Google My Business list. That's perfectly fine. Don't succumb to the temptation of going to a company who says, hey, we'll give you 100 reviews, evenly spaced over the next month. Google won't know, and it's all offshore. That's not going to work. Google's probably going to let you get away with that. Yelp is not. And long-term, Google won't either. They're able to spot that. Anybody that's in a business of writing fake reviews, that's going to set up a pattern over time. Keep in mind, Google and Yelp too see all of these. So if they see an IP address that comes back to China writing reviews about tons of restaurants all over the United States, that's kind of weird, right? And so they can see these patterns. They know what a normal review profile looks like. And anybody that's doing this at scale is going to set up some sort of a pattern. So don't pay any outside agency ever to do reviews. Incidentally, I saw a study just in the last couple of months that said that in e-commerce categories on Amazon, roughly 60% of the reviews are fake.
Wow.
Amazon is not doing a good job at whittling those out. Yelp is doing a pretty good job at spotting these patterns. Google is not, but they will be there eventually. Let's talk about leveraging social media. First of all, social media posts, the links in them are always no followed. No follow is a little hidden attribute that goes inside the HTML on the page right next to the link that tells Google basically that wasn't a link that you could vouch for. So examples of no followed links is if somebody buys an ad on your site, you're supposed to no follow the link to indicate to Google, hey, they paid for this. I don't really know about these guys, but they gave me some money. Don't count it in your page rank calculation. If it's a blog comment, you can't control. Somebody comments on your blog post about Montessori schools and says, buy cheap Viagra here, and links to their site, blog comments like that are going to get automatically no followed by your blogging software because you can't control that. So that's the purpose of no follows. Social media is the same thing. It's a lot like blogs or forums in that Facebook can't control what you post on your timeline and what that link is. So to prevent Facebook with a massive domain authority from allowing people to hugely manipulate links and rankings, everything on Facebook is no followed. However, if you promote heavily on social media, that can get whatever it is you're trying to show people noticed by people who might link to you. They might be bloggers, they might be people at various news outlets, they might be people in the industry who are, writing some story write-up. You used to be able on Facebook to target people that worked for a different organization. And so if you really wanted to get written up in the local newspaper, you do a paid promotion on Facebook to people who work for that newspaper. And so you're targeting maybe 100 people. It's very, very cheap. And you can make sure every time they're on Facebook, they see your stuff. After a while, they're like, wow, this must be the big Montessori school in Portland because I see it all the time. And they won't even notice they see it all the time. But anyway, targeted promotion on social media can get other people to notice you more and eventually check you out, link to you, things like that. Especially in the space you're in, where if you're a Montessori school in Chicago, you don't care about visitors in San Francisco. So you don't need to do the super expensive promotion on Facebook to all of the US. You'll just promote to people who are in Chicago and even further than that, probably only 3 or 4 zip codes who are right close to the school. That's a pretty cheap promotion because you want not just your promoted post there, which is basically an ad or a marketing message to get in front of the parents there, but you also want it to get in front of reporters who write for publications that those parents would read in that area. So that's really where you're going to get the win for SEO from social media. But also, when people reshare something that you've promoted on Facebook, they reshare that to their timeline. The way Facebook works is the timeline is everything that gets posted to your page. Your newsfeed is not your timeline. Your newsfeed is what you see when you log in, and that's based on what Facebook knows about you, who your friends are, what your interests are. So a mix of paid promotions, people who are targeting you because you live in the city, you like cats, whatever happens to be, and what your friends have shared on their own timelines. When you see something in your timeline, you go, that's cool. I like that story. I think this is great. My kid's in that program, whatever it is. And then you reshare. Now Google sees a post with a no-follow link in it, sure, but they see a post with a link to that school on your timeline as well as the school's timeline. So let's say you have one of the grades kids did some musical performance and maybe got on local TV or something like that. So you do a blog post about how the fourth graders, band got on, K123 TV, whatever it happens to be. You post that on your page for the school. Then you promote that heavily to people who either like your page or in the city or however you want to do it. So lots of people see that. If all you did is post on your page, Google sees one link from Facebook, that's not buzz. Everything's got one link from Facebook. If, however, 25 parents of kids in that class or friends of parents or family members who saw that reshare it onto their own timeline, hey, here's my grandson, here's my niece, whatever it is, here's my kid. Now Google sees 25 different timelines all have a link to that one page on your site. Those are no follow links, but Google's going to look at that and go, I don't know what's going on here, but there's a lot of buzz on Facebook about that page on that Montessori school site. So that's how to leverage paid promotion on Facebook to get Google to notice buzz about you. Google's not going to really see that paid promotion itself because the paid promotion only gets shown to people logged into Facebook. But when they reshare that paid promotion, which is free for you, Google sees that reshared copy.
That's brilliant.
There you go. Let's talk user engagement. Here's something that we're not sure about today. So we are sure that in the 10 blue links, if you get more than an average click-through rate for your position in the results for a term, that's positive. You'll eventually bump up the rankings. If your time on page after people click your result is really good, that'll bump you up. Conversely, if those are bad, that'll bump you down. Google decided, well, people don't like you as an answer to that question, and they'll stop showing you in the results. We know that's working in the 10 blue links. What we're not sure of is whether that affects ranking in the 3-pack. So certainly it affects organic rankings, but I have not seen a study that tests this for the 3-pack. However, we know Google has the mechanics to make it work for the organic rankings. And while the guys are right, guys and ladies are right, that the algorithm for the 3-pack or a different group from the regular organics, they probably talk at least a little and they share some data. Certainly they share link data. You got to expect that if Google is not letting the click patterns in the 3-pack impact rankings today, they will be soon. So if the page that your Google My Business page links to is terrible or slow or boring or broken or things like that, that's probably going to move you out of the 3-pack. If, on the other hand, the page that links to engages people, and so maybe you have a video on it to take a watch, or maybe the page that you link to, maybe it's the location page because you got 3 locations for your school, and so it's not your home page you're linking to Google My Business, it's the location for that physical school. Maybe on that page, rather than just have the address and the phone number and a map, maybe you also have a video about the school, and maybe you have a list of awards that school has gotten, or a list of links to press about that school, or whatever happens to be. So people land on it, they got some stuff to read, and they might click through other stuff or scroll around or whatever, but at least stay on the page for a while. So you ought to aim for that. All right, I'm going to rattle into 3 pro tips, and then we're going to go to a Q&A session. So pro tip number 1, for those 10, I keep calling it 10 blue links, that's the organics underneath the 3-pack, the content on your site and on your page matters a ton. So there's some traditional elements that Google looks at to figure out what the page is about, and that's the page title. The page title is what shows in the tab at the top of your browser, and it's also what shows in the search results as the headline for your site. Second piece is the H1 heading. H1 is just a special tag in HTML which indicates what the primary heading is for the page. If you're using WordPress, by default, when you create a new page or a new post, whatever you put in as the title for that post or page is going to end up in the page title and is going to end up in the H1 heading. So usually you don't have to mess with that. Images matter. So alt text on images, alt text is basically what shows up when you hover over an image. And it's what shows up if somebody was vision impaired and they're using a screen reader app and they hover over an image, and then the screen reader will tell them this is a picture of the Montessori school on Elm Street, or whatever your alt text is. So the alt text tells Google what's in the image. Image file names actually impact ranking as well. So let's say you want to rank for best Montessori school in Chicago. The ideal way to tune an image would you name the image file best-Montessori-school-in-Chicago.jpg. And then in the alt text, you'd say XYZ Montessori School, the best Montessori school in Chicago. So Google's going to see that term they're trying to figure out if you're a good page for in the image file name itself and in the alt text. That might sound like a pile of work and kind of, fringe and weird, and that can't really work. It has an unbelievable impact on ranking. It's ridiculous. So work that until that goes away. It's been working for 5, 6, 7 years at least, and I don't see any sign of it not working. Basically, it's a double confirmation to Google what the image is about. If they see those words in the image file name and the alt text, especially if they also see it in the page title and things like that, it's like, well, this must be an image of the best Montessori school in Chicago. By the way, meta description does not impact ranking. Meta description is a hidden piece in the page, like the page title, that the user doesn't actually ever see, except the user will see the meta description in the search results, because that's what turns into that 2 or 3 line snippet about the page. So Google doesn't look in there to decide whether your page is about that or not, or whether to rank you better or worse for that term. But because it shows up in the search results, that's your opportunity to sell yourself to the user, to get them to click on you. So let's say you have an A+ rating in the Better Business Bureau, or you're the highest rated Montessori school in the city by greatschools.net, or something like that. Get that in the meta description, because if that shows up in the 10 blue links, somebody who does a search for Montessori School Chicago, if they see something that says highest ranked Montessori school in Chicago by XYZ greatschools.net or whatever it is, that's pretty compelling. I'd click on that. Same thing with the Better Business Bureau rating. So that's the meta description. Does not affect ranking, but definitely affects that click-through rate. This next line here, schema.org/school. Schema.org markup is more hidden stuff on the page, which is meant to tell Google about the content and structure of the page. So when you have a schema.org/school entity in the JavaScript on the page, it tells Google this is about a school. There's an element of that called name, which would give the name of Montessori school. It's a Chicago Montessori school, whatever it happens to be. It has a description element, just like a meta description. It has an image element, which might be a picture of your school. It can have reviews, it can have all sorts of stuff. It's basically a bunch of markup that says, hey, Google, this page is all about a Montessori school named this, located at this address with this phone number, this logo, this image, these reviews, et cetera, et cetera. That's all really strong signals to Google about what that page is about, versus some boring blog post on Blogspot where somebody said, oh yeah, I'm looking at sending my kid to this Montessori school. Those two pages might have the same words on them, but Google knows one is about the school and the other is just some blog post. So that schema markup matters. The other thing about schema.org/school is it's a sub entity of a special schema called local business, and local business tells Google that the corporation or the organization that owns that website is actually a business that it should be shown on Google Maps and that people drive to, and here's the address and here's the phone number, here's the hours, all that sort of stuff. So it conveys a bunch of additional information kind of in the background to Google. Now, typically your page is going to have your address on it as well, and your phone number, and an image and your logo and things like that. But that markup basically gives Google a real clear picture of what each of those pieces are. What number on the page is the phone and what number is the street number. What word is the street name, what word is the city name, all that sort of stuff. If you embed a video in your page, and you should, Google loves video, it'll boost your rankings, you should have schema.org video object markup. That's another kind of schema that tells Google, hey, Google, there's a video on the page and it's about the best Montessori school in Chicago. So if Google is trying to decide, what page on the web is the best result for the best Montessori school in Chicago, if they find your page, which has an image of the Montessori school in Chicago and a video that's all about the best Montessori school in Chicago, and the page title is that, it's like, wow, this is ticking all the boxes. This has got all the good stuff anybody could possibly ever want about the best Montessori school in Chicago. So that's going to help you. The way you make that work is the video title, which is the name element in video object, needs to be whatever you're tuning the page for. If you're embedding a video, you could use YouTube. It's free. You might get your competitors' ads showing up when somebody plays the video, and so that's kind of crappy. And a YouTube video embed will slow your page down a lot. The JavaScript that's needed to embed a video from YouTube is over 1 megabyte, so that'll be about 2.5 seconds to download to desktop. So that'll slow your page up. If you use Wistia, which is WISTIA.com, Wistia's embed is way faster, and they generate this markup for you. I think there's a free package, and then there's a package for something like 25 bucks a month for, I don't know, up to 10 videos or something like that. But if you go to wistia.com, WISTIA.com, you can see the pricing and see how it all works. And they really do a really slick job of that. Last thing that matters for organic is thorough coverage of related terms and topics. And so what Google's looking for as one of the elements to decide whether your page is a great page about the topic or not is, are you covering all the terms that other pages about the topic also talk about? If Google looks at these other pages about Montessori schools in Chicago and they see the names of a bunch of suburbs and they see Maria Montessori and they see, XYZ other terms on the other pages, and you've only got half those terms, then it looks like you've only half covered the topic and you're not going to do as well. So what you want to do is look at your competition's pages that are ranking and see what they're talking about, and make sure you're talking about those same relatively unusual words and subtopics that they are. Now, does the content on your page matter for ranking in the 3-pack? And the answer is not really. Mostly it's the stuff we talked about before, the right category in Google My Business, consistency of the NAP, links to your site, and reviews. That's mostly what matters for the 3-pack. However, if it's an obscure search term, like let's say it's some specialty program then yeah, you'd want the name of that specialty program on the page, just like you'd want it in the Yelp reviews and the Google reviews, at least one of the review text. Pro tip number 2, Google Posts. What Google Posts are is basically little freebie ads you can put on your Google My Business listing, and you can do it for upcoming events is a good one. So maybe there's an open house or a registration day, or you can even do stuff that's not really promotional, like start of school, end of school, start of spring break. You can also do it for specials. Maybe you've launched a new school and you're really pushing for recruitment, and maybe you say, new children attending get the first year with a 20% discount or whatever it happens to be. That's the sort of stuff you can put up with Google Posts. So events, special offers, that sort of stuff. One thing to note is your posts only last 7 days. So after 7 days, it goes away. Doesn't mean you can't repost the same one, but you got to go into Google My Business and actually do it. They don't have a way for you to automate it yet. Although I think there is an API for automating it, but you have to be a programmer and you don't even go there. Good place to look to figure out how to use Google Posts effectively is this thing at Search Engine Land. And so if you just did a Google search for 12 things to succeed at Google Posts, you're going to find Search Engine Land's article up there pretty high. So that's worth a read. Pro tip number 3, the URL you list in that Google My Business data. So when you go into Google My Business, which is business.google.com, and you enter your school name and your address and your phone number, your hours, and upload your logo, all that sort of stuff, there's a place for the website. You want whatever page you list there. It could be your homepage, or let's say you're a network of 4 or 5 schools, and so you have different locations, and typically you'd have a different Google My Business page for each of those locations. You might have one website for all 4 schools maybe, or you might have separate websites. If you had one for all schools, you're probably going to have a page for each of the schools on that website. You want the page that you list in Google My Business listing, which is going to be that school's page, to have the schema.org local business markup on it, and the NAP in that markup needs to exactly match what's in the Google My Business data. So if you call it the Chicago Montessori School in your schema.org business markup, don't drop the word "the" in Google My Business. If you use a 800 number in your schema markup and you use a area code 503 number in Google My Business, Google's going to go, we think the phone number is wrong in one of these places. We don't know which one. So you want those to match. Just like matching to the directories, you want it to match in that local markup. And that's a wrap. I'm open for questions. Awesome. Can we have people chat questions to you, or can they join and talk?
Yes, sir. They can chat questions in, and I'm just going to drop this into our panelists and then also our Facebook Live users. Give me just a moment. And Michael, while we're waiting on those, actually I have a question for you. If our schools wanted to work with you, A, is that something that you're receptive to or a service that you have offered? And B, how would they get in touch with you?
Sure. That's I've worked with a bunch of different Montessori schools and a bunch of schools in general. What I'll have to say is, if I have an existing client that competes directly with you, I can't take you on as another client because I may have learned things about their marketing or whatever. It would not be fair to me to be working on another client's marketing, knowing what the competitor is trying to do. So as long as they're not in competition, which is unlikely to happen in this instance, and sure, that's fine. Easiest way to find me is just a Google SEO consultant. I'm on page 1 everywhere in the world and for that term. And so look for michaelcottam.com. That's my website. And you probably won't remember how to spell my last name or whatever. So just Google SEO consultant and you'll find me.
That's awesome. Question for you, sir, on content. One of the things that we do at Nito is we provide content for all of our Montessori schools on a monthly basis. So we have one writer, and she writes a blog for every week, an email newsletter for every week, and social posts for every day. We make that content available to our schools, and because Montessori has a very specific paradigm, the content tends to be applicable to, let's say, 80% of schools. They take it and modify it a little. So modify it for mission, vision, values, voice, and then post it to their site. Now, we actually cleared this with you prior to offering the service, but I was hoping you wouldn't mind touching on it a little, because I have gotten some pushback from schools saying, hey, does this kill our SEO?
Okay, so the big thing people are going to be worried about here is duplicate content. Google over the past few years has kind of made that a scary thing, and there's been a lot of chatter about it. But here's the real way duplicate content impacts you. Google doesn't particularly care that you have content in your site that's also on other sites. All that's going to happen is that if Google thinks that these are all copies of the same article, they're probably only going to list one or two copies of it. And typically they'll list whoever they think is the originator of it, so the first time they saw it published someplace, or maybe the site that has the strongest domain authority. So if you didn't modify it enough to make it unique enough that Google wants to show your copy as well, it's just not going to show up in the index when people search on that term. So that's not great, but it's not a terrible thing. If you have duplicate content on your site that's duplicate of other pages in your site, that's a different story. If Google thinks that your site has 100 different copies of what's really the same page just because you've done some weird stuff with links and tracking parameters or whatever, well, that's a bad thing because Google thinks your site's a lot of like just copy content. But that's a separate issue. Now, let's say your page has 5 pages that are written specifically for your school with photos of the school and names and pictures of the teachers and address stuff and whatever. Those pages are all very unique. And then you have 300 blog posts that are all straight copies of posts that Google sees on a lot of other sites. That might be a problem because Google's going to say, okay, 300 out of the 305 pages in your site are just syndicated content. If there's that much of that going on, then you don't look like you have much interesting to offer. You're just a republisher. So if you're taking content that is truly syndicated, it's been written someplace else, and you're not modifying it very much, then you probably also want to create content for your blog yourself a little bit that is very unique just to your school. Then you're going to change those numbers. Let's talk also while we're on the subject about how often you really need to blog. So as you know, I rank on page 1 for SEO Consultant Everywhere. That's a kind of competitive term since everybody who is one of those is trying to get on that page. I blogged 5 times last year in the year. Now, that's probably underperformance on my behalf. I probably would bump up a spot or 2 if I blogged, 3 times a month or 4 times a month. But I'm busy and lazy and I haven't done that. So, once a week is probably a good kind of interval for blogging. Once a month isn't bad either. If you're getting some content that's syndicated coming in once a month, then it might make sense to do 2 blog posts of your own the rest of the month. And they don't necessarily have to be, giant creation. Be about a teacher who just hired or had a baby or a class that just, attended some or did some field trip, or it could be all sorts of stuff. It doesn't have to be heavy stuff. What you want Google to see is there's a bunch of new stuff happening. You do want Google to see that there's some attention being paid on social media to that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have a blog post and it's about a field trip the 3rd grade kids did, share that on Facebook, and you might even promote that a bit so that Google sees, okay, you have this little post that might have 1 or 2 pictures and 1 paragraph, not tons of content, but 5 or 10 people on Facebook shared it. So there's some interest there. There's some buzz. That's good stuff. That's not what you want to avoid Google seeing is, you stand on your soapbox, every week and you spout something off and nobody cares. Nobody links, nobody shares, nobody likes. You don't want that to happen. So if you're taking the content that really is syndicated, tweak a little bit, mix that up a little bit with a little bit of your own.
That's great. I appreciate that, sir. And we've got a question from one of our Facebook viewers, and I think that this references key phrase strategy. The question is how do I know what parents are searching for to find me?
Okay, that's an excellent question. The old go-to was the Google AdWords Keyword Planner. Google basically knows more about what people search for than anybody else, simply because Google is 90-some% of the search market here in the US. So all these other tools that are, if they're not using Google data, they're only seeing a tiny sliver of the searches, like Alexa would be an example. All they're seeing is searches done by people who have to download the Alexa toolbar. Run away screaming from those. So AdWords has the data. Problem is, the AdWords Keyword Planner tool is tweaked so that they don't really show you the search volumes for the term you typed in. They'll show you how many times they would show your ad if you told them to target that search term. So if you type in Montessori school, Google wants to sell some ads. Google might say, we're going to, if people search for anything related to school in your city, we're going to show the ad, or anything related to Montessori, or anything related to preschool, or anything if they search for a word like kindergarten or teacher. Maybe, I mean, it could be, they can get really broad. Typically, you're going to see the numbers AdWords Keyword Planner shows between 10 and 100 times what the real exact search volume is. So what you'll want to find out when you're looking for search terms is, are people searching for Montessori school or Montessori preschool,
Mm.
or, Montessori schools plural? And Ad Keywords Planner and AdWords will not show you those differences. However, they still have the data, and that exact match data is available in an API that they have. And tools like SEMrush and Moz Keyword Planner have access to that. Some people like the SEMrush tool. I'm a big fan of the Moz tool, especially since they did an update about 2 or 3 months ago, and they're showing you exact match volumes. Keep in mind that API only shows them some rounded up buckets. So they'll show a number of 90 searches a month, or 140 searches a month, or 220 searches a month, but they won't show 100 or 200. So they just funny rounding buckets. What Moz has done is a whole bunch of testing and figured out, okay, when Google says 140 searches a month, we know the numbers between 101 and 200. And so in the Moz tool, you'll see that range. And that seems to be pretty accurate. The other place you can do some keyword research is if you look in Search Console in the performance report, go to the Queries tab, and look at the impressions for terms. So sort by impressions, and that'll tell you, if you're on page 1 for the term, how many searches happened in the past, whatever you set the date range to there.
Oh, that is cool. Question for you on key phrase strategy, just piggybacking on the last question. Not everybody's searching for a Montessori school necessarily. Montessori schools are, of course, competing in the Montessori ecosystem, but they're also just competing in, preschools or elementary schools in general. How do you balance that sort of competitive paradigm?
Okay, so that's interesting. So actually, my son Ben went to Montessori preschool back when I lived in Portland, and I did the same thing. I was searching for preschools back then, and I went, "Oh, hadn't thought of that." Read more, and there we go. Off you went. And so that's obviously going to have a much higher search volume, probably a lower conversion rate. But if you get 100 times the search volume and half the conversion rate, you're still getting 50 times the volume out of that term. So that the competition is going to be much tougher to rank for non-Montessori terms, but the same ranking factors apply. Links to the page, content on the page, thoroughly covering the topic, social media buzz, all that sort of stuff. It's perfectly reasonable to use the same page, the home page, to target multiple terms. So as an example, I have a travel site called Visual Itineraries, and I've got a page that I very specifically targeted the heck out of it for best time of year to visit Tahiti, because I knew that converted to leads for me. And so I built this page targeted at that. But actually the number one traffic driving term for the page is Tahiti weather. What's interesting, and that term doesn't convert very well, otherwise I'd retune the page for it. But that's the top term in terms of traffic of the page. I think the page gets 12 or 15,000 visitors a month. That top term only drives 3% of the traffic. So that tells you what the wide variety of terms are that are able to drive traffic and get me on page 1. It's not a matter, as it was, say, 5 years ago, is you pick one term and it's all going to be about that term and a couple slight variations. My page there drives, the next bunch of terms down the list would be probably best time of year to visit Tahiti, when should I go to Bora Bora, weather in Moorea. A whole bunch of those don't even have one word in common. Same sort of thing could happen with your homepage for a Montessori school. You could have all sorts of content on the page that talks about, alternative to traditional preschools, or talk about, pros and cons of different styles of preschools, or different types of educational paradigms. We know what's different between what the typical public school does, or what you would say even specific local public schools that are your competitors, and what's offered. You might be talking about class sizes, you might be talking about teacher training, you might be talking about hours, and who knows what, right? But by adding that kind of content into the page, you're now giving Google a picture that this is about a preschool as well, not just a Montessori school. And
Mm.
it's about a school in the Alameda district of Portland. So maybe somebody's searching for preschools in Alameda district, Portland, or preschools near Oregon State University, or preschools near downtown Portland, or whatever, wherever it is they happen to live, and they're looking for options. And so um, by covering those other topics and not being completely focused on the Montessori side, you can bring that traffic in. And again, Google's looking at the other pages that would otherwise rank highly for whatever your target term is and seeing what they're talking about. So there's absolutely no substitute. There's no tool that's better than you doing the search you're trying to rank for yourself and using your own eyeballs to look at what Google is ranking and what those 10 sites are saying. So
Mm.
not just in the page title and the meta description that shows up in search results, click on through. And if they're talking about discipline, well, then you better talk about discipline. If they're talking about a lunch program, you better talk about a lunch program. That sort of stuff.
That's great advice. Michael, do you have time for one more question? I know we're 20
Sure.
minutes over. Awesome. So last question is, do you have a preference in terms of website platform? Everyone tells us to use WordPress, but we've been on Wix and it's easier to manage.
Oh, Wix was not going to like me. So I do prefer WordPress in general. I'm a bit of a technical nerdy guy, and I like to get all sorts of stuff, in the background, like schema and stuff like that, for Google to see, so Google understands what's on the page. I like to use my own ways of embedding things. So WordPress allows you more flexibility, especially if you have a WordPress programmer who can build you some templates to let you, let's say, embed Wistia videos or whatever in an easy way. Wix does a lot of this for you. What I found in working with Wix sites is I can usually make them do what I need them to do, but it tends to be a bit more work, and there's some places where my hands are simply tied and I can't implement stuff I need to. Now, for Montessori schools, your content is likely to be far more static, and by that I mean you're probably not going to have e-commerce type pages. I mean, maybe you do for some transactional pages for where they refill their lunch money account, or I don't know, things like that, or they pay for their tuition. But those aren't really search landing pages anyway. If you were selling kitchen supplies and you were going to try to do it on Wix, I'd say no.
Mm.
You're gonna be up against a wall all over the place. For schools, which is much more static content, static plus blog content, I think it's not nearly as bad. There's going to be a cost moving from Wix to WordPress. You're going to get more flexibility when you do. I think what you want to do, though, if you're on Wix and you're wondering you should move, is think about what it is that you're trying to put on your website that you're not able to with Wix. And if you're not running into that now, stay where you are. It's fine. If you do an SEO audit in your site and your page titles are good and you don't have broken links and you're distributing link through your menu just fine and that's all going to work fine, then that's okay. You can stay there. If you don't have a site yet today, or let's say you have a site that was just hand coded in something, you're going, we got to put it on some sort of platform. I would typically push more to WordPress. Yes, you're going to spend some money on a web developer to set up your theme and things like that. I think in the long run, you'd be better off. But if you're on Wix already and it's working for you and it's not throwing up roadblocks to kinds of content you want to add, maybe you have seminars and evening programs, you want online registration for things like that, and maybe that's hard. Okay, maybe that's worth a move. But if you're not running into that, you could stay where you are. So don't fix what ain't broke.
Okay. That's a good response. Michael, I know you already know this because I talk about it all the time. I'm just such a big fan of yours, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate your time today. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Happy to be here.
Yeah, this was a big deal. And to all of our Montessori school owners, if you're watching this, Mr. Cottam is available to you as a potential resource. He's offers SEO consultation. I recommend him very strongly. One of the things he does for us, for a lot of our clients, is he does an SEO audit. And so if you want to have him audit your site, reach out to him, get a bid. I can tell you that we've seen pretty significant bumps for certain clients just after fixing what's wrong with the audit, not even necessarily driving into, recurring SEO. Did I say that okay?
Yeah. So the audit is plugging holes in the boat. fixing your website so Google can see what they're supposed to see. They know your pictures are of what they are. They know your videos are what they are, all that sort of stuff, all the technical stuff that otherwise causes Google to be confused or not understand what you have.
Mhm.
And that's the piece I focus on. And then the ongoing SEO stuff, you shouldn't need somebody like me. You should need somebody to do link building, which probably means PR person, content creation, social media kind of stuff. That's the ongoing stuff.
Yeah. So get in touch with them. Thank you so much, Mr. Cottam, for being here. And for our other members, I'll see you next Thursday, 10:30 a.m. Pacific, 1:30 p.m. Eastern. You can register at nitomarketing.com/coaching. Appreciate all y'all's trust. And we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks very much.